Hey gang, we are in Ohio. We're in Delaware, Ohio. We're at Oak Grove Cemetery here, and we've got another story to share on the grave robbing of the 1800s, the resurrectionists. I know a lot of you guys like these stories, so this one's going to be an interesting one, only that this location right here, there was a sting operation, and the grave robbers were caught red-handed. And there were some interesting things that unfolded, especially the ending of the story is going to make your hair jump a little bit and go, what? Is that how it was? Anyway, without further tease, let's take a walk. I'll tell you all about it. And it happened right here. Some interesting monuments. Very old cemetery, of course. We love these places. So the boy's name was Bernie O. Norris. He's a 12-year-old boy. And it was here that the city marshal here, there was a guy who was suspecting that this grave robbing stuff was going on. His name was Charles V. Austin. And it's been a while. There's a pattern of bodies that were being snatched, like in other places, but it was getting pretty bad here. And at this cemetery and some of the others near here, there were several attempts, and several bodies were stolen. And in those attempts, they were really trying to get out here and at night, and the relatives, the people, the descendants of those who died were really being diligent, and a lot of times they scared these guys off. And they were successful, but it was getting worse. And the marshal had his eye on this one guy. Of course, the doctor, his name was John Walker Neal. And why? Why did he have his eye on this guy? Well, he's a doctor who hadn't practiced in years. And adding to that, he was a drunkard, a drug user. He was using opium. And his wife, it was his wife who was supporting him. And interestingly, she was supporting him and herself by boarding students who were attending Ohio Wesleyan College here in Delaware. Now, he also had a brother, Dr. Alexander Neal, just south nearby Columbus. So he figured that these two guys were stealing bodies together, and he decided to set a trap. So what he's decided to do is he got this young guy, his name George Corwin, and he put him up to talk with Dr. John Neal. And of course, he said, well, Corwin went to the doctor who he knew. That's why he picked him. And he said, hey, I need a body. Such and such doctors at the school, they want a body. And of course, Dr. John was like, oh yeah, we can do that. And Corwin's kind of set him up. He said, yeah, there's this boy, Bernie Norris, from London, actually, a little ways away from here. He died of typhoid. He died, and it's like, yeah, it just got buried, so this is the guy to do the job. You're the man. Get the 12-year-old boy. So they were all over it. Now, Bernie had died on November 12th, 1879, and they went to work on it, and they decided that the night of November 20th would be the night. Cool, fresh night. The body was still fresh. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you from the newspaper of the times. It was written, maybe a couple of weeks later, the Ridgewood Gazette, Thursday, November 27th, 1879. And the article says, Dr. J.W. Neal, who has resided here for years, is a middle-aged man, but has for years been so addicted to drinking and opium eating that he has entirely lost his medical practice. and has in reality been supported for years by his wife, a very estimable lady. Within the past few years, several bodies have been stolen and several more attempts have been made. A brother of Dr. Neil lives in Columbus and is a physician here, and it is believed that the two brothers have been carrying out the business together. A young fellow named George Corwin was secured by Marshal Ostin and succeeded in making an arrangement with Dr. Neil to secure the body of a young boy, and it says a colored boy, was brought here for burying over 1 week ago. So I'm not sure if they're referring to Norris, but as we go on, Dr. Neil secured the help of an Irishman named Patrick Hanahan. It says in the paper, I think it's Hanahan. So we're going to go by Hanahan. And all arrangements were made for robbing the grave last night. Young Corwin then notified Marshal Ostin and the mayor, and a detachment of 6 officers and several extras were sent to watch the cemetery, which lies in an out-of-the-way place and has been almost entirely abandoned. The officers waited several hours in the dark until the 3 gravediggers, including young Corwin, got fairly to work, and they were being watched. Of course, Dr. Neil superintended the digging, but when they had reached the top of the coffin, a low whistle from one of the officers was heard, and Neil told the man to leave the grave and be quiet for some time. But as they were leaving, they ran into the concealed officers. And Neil, upon seeing them, immediately fired his revolver at one of them. Hanahan, after firing his revolver several times, was finally overpowered. But Dr. Neil made a desperate struggle. Officer John Griffin caught him, but Neil fired, the bullet passing through his hat and cutting off a lock of his hair. Neil then used the butt of his revolver, inflicting several severe wounds about the face of Officer Griffin. In the struggle, Dr. Neil was terribly handled and his face severely pounded. By the assistance of a young fellow named Craven, he was finally overpowered and taken to jail. The excitement among those who were present was intense, and at one time it looked as though some of the more enraged citizens would hang him to one of the trees in the college campus. At the preliminary trial in the mayor's office this afternoon, the excitement was at a fever heat. The street was crowded with citizens anxious to know the result. And after hearing the testimony of the officers, young Corwin and several others, both Neil and Hanahan were bound over for court. The charge of shooting with intent to kill was also entered against Neil, who is now in jail in default of $2,000 bail. Well, the 2 culprits, of course, would plead not guilty to the charges, and after spending a couple of weeks in jail, Dr. Neil was released on bond. Of course, his father paid for that. And on January 23rd of 1880, over to Patrick Hanahan, he was convicted, fined $300 and sentenced to 3 months in jail. This is where it gets interesting. The good doctor, Dr. Neil, claimed the insanity defense. And then when that didn't work, he didn't show up to court when the trial started and said his brother sent an affidavit because his brother's a doctor and said he's sick and he's been in bed for weeks. So they postponed the court date, and the new court date came, I don't know, a couple months later, and he was still sick. And this is where it gets kind of funny, because he just kept not showing up to court, and finally everybody just got tired of it, and the whole thing just kind of went away. Pun intended, it died off. So I guess the moral to the story is, the grave robbing stories in those days, and these kind of, again, this wasn't like murder. But just think about it. You just kind of wear the cord out and the judge finally gives up. Everybody kind of moves on to the next thing. I found that hilarious. So we are here at the grave of the Norris family. There you see a marker here. There are a lot of family members here, family plot. So we'll take a quick look at those first. Bernie's stone is here. Reinterred here. Interesting. So here's Elizabeth M. and William H. Norris. I'm guessing this might be brothers and sisters. And that is all the Norrises I could find. But here's the stone of Bernie. And it's hard to read, but we'll give it a shot here. Our boy. And that's what's heartbreaking when I read this. And aside from the grave robbing attempt, just a little boy died. You know, such a tender transitional age. It's just so sad. Yeah, I'll put a flashlight on it and see if we can read it a little better. Our boy. There you see his name, Bernie Norris, Bernie O. Norris, and when he died. That's the part that gets me, our boy. So sad. But as you stand here again, you know, this is where they were. And they were digging the hole right here, just a cylindrical hole straight down. And they reached the coffin lid probably 4 feet down. Again, you have to imagine all the dirt here wasn't grass, it was a new grave, so all the dirt was turned over and easily dug out. But then when they reached the head of the coffin, right here, they heard a low whistle. You have to imagine, where were they hiding? Maybe, of course, then there weren't as many stones, but I'm guessing if you look over there, right there, there's a big hill that goes down, and there's graves down there, and I'll bet you that's where they were. So just imagine. There was a low whistle from right over there in the dark. And the doctor said, "Be quiet." And they backed off. "Let's get away from here." And they said, "Which way should we go? Should we go that way? Over here?" "No, the road is over here." Of course, it was a gravel road, horses. "Let's go this way. Let's run down the hill." So they went this way probably. And that's where the officers were. And that's where the gunfire. Can you imagine? And then after all of that, it's attempted murder. Then it's, I'm sick and we'll just wait it out, and then everything just, let's all move on. Anyway, actually thought that was hilarious. All right, so to the Norris family. And a little Bernie here still rests, and hopefully he is resting in peace.